Great. All right. And I hope you can all see my screen that I'm sharing, this little info session 2025. Awesome. Let's get started. So for all of you who don't know me, my name is Tara Smith. I'm a project manager at the Neighborhood Design Center, and I manage the 614 Beautiful Grant Program. This program is about providing access to capital for community-based placemaking projects that enhance the overall visual character of the neighborhood. So the NDC is here to provide technical support as needed, whether that be helping with the site plan or other needs that might arise. We can also help you connect with partners and opportunities to make your project happen. But that is what the NDC does. We manage. Also, I apologize if you hear any dogs barking in the background. I have two, but I'm trying to keep them under control. Um, we also we work in partnership with the City Council, specifically Council Member Lourdes Barroso de Padilla. The fundings comes from her discretionary funds. And then we also work with the Department of Neighborhoods for the City of Columbus. So anytime I reference stakeholders, those are the two stakeholders I'm referencing. Today, just to give you a brief overview of what we'll be doing, I'm going to give you a little overview of the program, things like what's eligible, what kind of projects we are looking for, and then we'll do a deep dive into the application requirements. I know there's quite a few, so we'll go through that. Then we'll finish up a presentation with the jury evaluation criteria. So you know what the jury is actually going to be judging based on. And then we'll hop over to the website and I can show you where some of the resources that I've touched on live. So, and like I said, feel free to use the chat for any questions, and then I will be asking for questions later. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask then. All right, let's get started. There we go. Okay. So starting with the program process, um, the first thing that happens in this program is creating. This is where you guys have probably already started this process. You're finding your site, developing an idea. This could be a vacant piece of property in your neighborhood that you'd like to see transformed, a blank wall that really needs a mural, things like that. Um, then we get to engage. I think you're probably in this part of the process as well if you're hoping to apply. So this is where you're engaging with your community, getting feedback, finding out if there are community partners that are also interested in your idea, and if you can build a foundation of support with community and organizations. Apply is where we are or where we're getting to. So the first step to funding your project is completing the program application. The deadline is October 6th at 5 p.m. I'll say that a couple more times. It's a Monday. So just be aware of that. For those who are granted funds, the next step will be build. So this is where you'll make sure you've gotten any necessary permits or approvals. We can help you identify what permits you might need, but you should start doing that research now. And then there's also information on the FAQ page of the website. And then implement, you'll be building out your project. And lastly, the best part, some would say, is celebrate. So this could be a project unveiling, getting your community together and inviting them into the space to enjoy their new community asset, and then programming, if you have any, in the space that you're looking to transform. So just a few key dates to keep in mind is the application period opened October 25th, and submissions are due October 6th at 5 p.m. To give you some context, we did have a first round of applications for this grant cycle in July, if that's why you're seeing it again. And we awarded a little under half of the grant funding. When we get into the scoring criteria, we have a threshold of scores that we are able to fund. If we have more that go over that threshold, then we start to go, for the top scorers. But for the last round, we just didn't have quite as many grant applications. So we granted a little less than half. So we have a little bit more than half available. And our goal is always to use all that money, get all that grant money out into the community. So that being said, this deadline for that about half that's left is October 6th at 5 p.m. The jury will deliberate mid-October, I'd say probably about 2 weeks after the application is due. And then the grant announcement will come late October, the last week of October. Grant funds will become available to those awarded in November. And for project implementation, it can happen anytime after that into the summer of 2026. There is a spending deadline for grant funds for July 31st of 2026. I just want to put that out there first and foremost. We have had instances of people needing extensions to that date, just so you're aware, but we do like if people can aim towards that. And something else to note is that your project does not have to be finished by that date. We just ask that your funds be spent. So let's move on. Any questions right off the bat for just that context and key dates? Feel free to add them to the chat too if you have any. Just gonna expand. Awesome. Alrighty, let's move on then. All right, we're going to get into eligible projects. So we've sort of played around with categorizing our projects. Um, so the first category of eligible projects is public art. This is art specifically created to be enjoyed by the public. This could include murals, sculptures. The picture that you're seeing now is a 614 grantee who designed wraps around the downtown public restrooms. I think this one's on Third. So those are just a few examples of public art. We do get a decent amount of murals as well. The next category is landscape enhancements. So these are improvements to the landscape that make a space more functional or visually appealing. This could be planters, a pocket park. This grantee is from year 2, and they did a storybook trail. It's really beautiful. I went to the opening of it. It goes all the way around their property. There's a book and it goes to the next page on these little, um, what are those called? These little stands have pages of the book, and it brings together the other programming they do around the landscaping. So just a little bit of background for that, but any sort of landscape enhancement is considered. The next is wayfinding and signage. So this could be signage that helps people get spatially oriented and find their destination or display helpful information. So think directional signage, historical markers. This picture is a grantee who did banners all along Parsons Avenue that were designed by community members. A note about this category is it can be you can have to use a little bit more creativity when you think about how to engage the community. Um, so if you are thinking about doing some sort of ways finding and signage, I just really encourage you to think about the community engagement portion and how to get the community involved in the creative process of that. Um, Community business signage, probably not. We do ask that the improvements be for like a community organization, not a private business. If you are interested in improvements to like a small business, you can look at our Power of One grant program. It's also run by the Neighborhood Design Center. You can find that on our website. If you don't think that program applies, I would just send me an email. I'll put it again in the chat. There might be like a special circumstance around the one you're talking about. Um, So I hope that at least briefly answers your question. Um, but yes, wayfinding and signage is another category. Then we have facade improvements slash urban design. So this is sort of signage, but for a community organization. So this is improvements to the front or exterior of a building. This could be shade sails, building signage, or public seating. This is not a grantee, but it is a good example of what a facade improvement could look like with the sign over the door, the planters, and then the beautiful mural that they have. Last but certainly not least is transit-oriented or streetscape design, or excuse me, streetscape projects. So improvements to the built and natural environment around public transit or streets. This could be bus stop amenities, a parking lot beautification. We've had past grantees with branded bike racks as part of their project. That all counts. This is not a grantee that you're seeing here, but I do think it's a great example. So if you have anything in mind like that, feel free to apply. The last thing I will say that's not on a slide is that if your project doesn't neatly fit and into any of these categories, but aligns with the spirit of the grant, feel free to reach out and ask and to get an idea if you think you're eligible, or you can just apply anyway, and we'll let you know if you're eligible. All right. Any other questions outside in regards to eligibility and eligible project types? Awesome. Moving on. These are just some considerations when it comes to applying and the types of projects. So for the community by the community, these pictures are just a small example of some of the ways our grantees have activated their sites and gotten people involved in the creative process. Sort of what I was talking about in the signage portion is we're really looking for community involvement, not just at the celebration at the end, but different phases of the project. This could be like engaging a volunteer base, working with community partners. As you can see here, we have some kids getting in paint and actually helping paint the wall. We also have on the top left is the University District Organization, who got some community members together to ideate about what the space could look like. So they had some Play-Doh and markers and went to town. That's just like sort of the vision of community involvement. Some additional eligibility requirements is that the site must be in the City of Columbus corporation limits. So we are looking to improve areas that have not had the same level of investment. Opportunity neighborhoods are prioritized. I'll show you where you can find the link to that on our website. But we welcome applicants from all areas of Columbus. If you're not in an opportunity neighborhood, please still apply. Don't let that stop you. Um, Next, primary applicant must be 18 years old. You can have youth involved. You just can't have them be the primary applicant. Teams should have an appropriate insurance or waivers for implementation and site use. This is just if you're doing a lot of hardcore construction for your project, make sure that you have all the insurance and waivers needed to protect your organization. Organizations must be able to receive grant funds either directly or through a fiscal agent. So if you're a 501c3, you can receive the grant money directly. That's great. If not, you will need to seek a fiscal agent who can take that money for you and take it from us, distribute it to you. I will also say that we can't give grants directly to like an individual, so it does need to be associated with an organization. If you need help finding a fiscal agent, feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure we could help you with that process as well. Alrighty, and then I'm just going to get into what we can fund. So going along with eligibility, the grant is for up to $15,000 for each selected awardee. This could go to permits and application fees, supplies and equipment rental, vendor and contractor payments, and food and water for volunteers. But the food and water is limited to up to $500. So just something else to be aware of. All right, I will pause here again and see if you have any questions. Um, I will also ask at the end, and again, welcome to use the chat. So feel free to jump in. All righty. Awesome. So now we are getting sort of into the meat and potatoes of the application. We're going to go through each part that's required, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of your questions there as well. So, um, all the application materials can be downloaded on our website, www.614beautiful.org. I will show you at the end where on the website you can find these things. The program brief, I'll show you where that lives as well, is a great resource. It has everything that I'm going over today laid out in it. Tells you what is eligible, what's not, what's required in the application, all that great stuff can be found there. And again, the submissions are due October 6th at 5 p.m. All right, what needs to be submitted? So the first part of the application is the application form. This gives us like a brief overview of who you are. So your project site, where it is, your project name, primary contact with info, project partners. You'll see this box here. You can list your project partners. I would say as we get into later, the presentation that you'll be submitting, you'll go into detail about your project partners there. So on the application form, you can just list their name and then a brief explanation of who they are. So for example, United Methodist Church, and then volunteer recruitment or something like that. Or you already have your artists, so Tara Smith muralist. It can be as brief as that. The next portion is the project category. This is more for us. We're collecting some data about what sort of projects we're funding, if there's any gaps. So feel free to check any that apply of the ones we went through, the categories. And then if you, again, feel like yours just doesn't quite fit into any of the other ones, but fits into the spirit of the grant, select other, give a little explanation. Last is the fiscal agent. So if you are the fiscal agent, you can put NA, not applicable. If you are your own fiscal agent, so you don't need a fiscal agent, but maybe you're not the primary contact when it comes to the finances or getting your money, you can put whoever is that primary contact under the fiscal agent. And then lastly, we have a little application checklist on the bottom, which if you don't feel like reading through the program brief to make sure you've hit everything, this little checklist just gives you, it lists everything out for you. So you can check mark and make sure you've finished everything. All right. So now we're getting into the 8 to 15 slide presentation. So as we get into these minimum, what we're looking for, it adds up to 8. So the minimum is 8 slides if you're going to hit everything that we're asking. We do allow some wiggle room up to 15, just in case you need a few extra slides to really get your vision across. You have a really detailed explanation about your volunteer base, your community engagement, anything like that. You can use those extra slides to help you get in what might not be covered in those minimum requirements, or just something you'd like to expand on. We do ask that you keep it to 15 slides though. These 15 slides include, or the 8 minimum, is 1 slide of your project team and your partners. This is where you can go into a little bit more depth about any project partners that you're going to be working with. You're going to have 1 slide showing the site's existing conditions. Feel free to take a photo on your phone. It doesn't have to be professional quality, but we do want to see the physical space that you're proposing to put your project on. The next is one slide of your proposed idea slash visioning. Um, I will say some people can get a little deterred if maybe they don't have like a professional rendering of their vision. Don't let that deter you. Feel free to put um, photos for reference of maybe a similar project in another place that you're using as a best practice. If you have like a picture of a mural that you think is very similar to what yours will look like, put it in there. Just note that these are sort of best practices you're going for. You could even take the existing conditions photos that you have and draw on them of what you are hoping that your project will look like. Um, or if you do have a professional rendering, feel free to submit that as well. Really, anything with the skills and the resources that you have available to you now that will help the jury get an idea of what you want the project to look like and where sort of it will be on the site. The next requirement is one slide outlining your volunteer base and community engagement. So this is who's going to be implementing the project physically, and are there any other aspects of community engagement in the project? We'd love to hear about that. Um, I would recommend maybe using a few of the extra slide if you feel like you need to use the extra slides on the community engagement portion. Um, and then we have two slides detailing your implementation plan and your implementation timeline. So we'll see on the website, we have a helpful sheet called Implementation Considerations. This is just a PDF you can download with some questions to consider when it comes to implementation. It's a great jumping off point if you haven't sat down to really think through that yet, or it can help you think of things that you haven't thought of yet. You do not have to answer every single question on the slide. We just want to see that you've thought through the implementation plan, who's doing it, where you're getting things from, things like that. And then a timeline of implementation. Yes, you are allowed to use your funding for contractors. So, yes, you definitely we urge you to pay your muralists actually, unless they're doing it, in kind. But you are welcome to contractors, and especially for murals, things like landscaping. Um, if you need to hire a professional, that's great. Um, and if you have, for example, like who you're going to be contracting with, feel free to include that in your project team slash partners, um, or in your implementation plan. Um, and then the timeline is just from, you're welcome to include preparation that you've done already, but we definitely want to see from getting the grant to implementation, what are you sort of aiming for? It doesn't necessarily have to be hard dates, but if you have idea of, months or, seasons, we want to see that as well. The next slide will be detailing your maintenance plan. We have another helpful PDF called Maintenance Considerations, just to help you as a jumping off point of what do I need to be considering with maintenance. We really just want to make sure that um, you are thinking through how this project is going to be maintained and that you are good stewards of the project after the money is given out. And then the last will be just illustrating how the site will be used by the community. Um, Illustrating not in the literal sense, you definitely don't have to draw a picture, make a rendering, but give us an idea of how once the project is finished and after you've had the community unveiling, how you expect the community to be using the site. All right. I know that the slide presentation is a big chunk of the application. So if you have any other questions for just that portion, feel free to ask or put it in the chat. Um, Again, as you're making it, you're welcome to reach out with any questions to me as well. All right. The third portion of what needs to be submitted is a detailed budget. And I will show you on the website where you can download that template. We do ask that you use the template. It's cut out of this picture because I screenshotted it, but there are instructions on the template as well. Um, but the budget, so it can't be for more than 15K. We do ask that you keep it at 15K. Um, you don't need to include um, things that you maybe are spending outside of the grant, but it's part of the bigger project. We don't need to see that. If this is part of a bigger project, say that your organization is doing, you can include that in the slide presentation. What we want to see from the grant application budget is just what you will be spending the 15K on. You are also welcome to ask for less than 15K, but like as you see necessary, but I always recommend going for the full 15. Um, we do ask that you include a 10% contingency in your budget. So this is 10% out of the 15K. So if you're asking for the full 15K, that means setting aside 1,500 as your contingency. Um, so really you're asking for 13,500 with a 1,500 contingency set aside. This is just because we don't want to see your project come to a halt if something got more expensive than you were anticipating. If for some reason the cost of lumber goes up a lot more than we expected, you can reach into that 15K and use that to help cover the difference. Um, so that's just what that's for. It gives you just a little bit of wiggle room. We do want to see line items for all anticipated spending. Um, and there's a little example on here. So if you're getting 2 cubic feet of black mulch, this is how much it costs individually. You're getting 5 of them. The total cost is 1990, and then it will add up your subtotal here. It should calculate this for you, but Excel can be finicky, so we're just going to cross our fingers. Um, but yes, we also do allow up to a 500-word budget narrative if necessary. So unless you really think a budget narrative, like unless you really need to say a few words about why something's priced like this or give a little bit more explanation, but I haven't really seen it be necessary yet. So you could be the first one. You're also welcome. Reach out if you have any questions about that. All right. Okay, the fourth requirement is a letter of support from the community. So we require a letter of support as a way to help verify that you have community buy-in for your project and you're not just, Lone Ranger out there making something that maybe nobody's going to use. We recommend asking a civic organization, like a neighborhood association, for example, or your area commission is a great place to go to ask for a letter. Um, there's also the area commission website is on our website, a link to it. So if you need to figure out who your area commissioner is. Anyway, I recommend asking them. If it's not possible to get either of those, for example, you can also do a neighborhood sign-off sheet, which is just like a petition to show support for the project from community members. Just give them some background about your project. And have them sign off to show support. Yes, the Franklinton Board of Trade is a great example. They'd be a great letter of support. If you are working with a community organization as a partner, as long as they're not the organization applying, they can also work as your letter of community support. So community organizations are a great organizations to go to. You cannot, though, write your own letter of support. So want to put that out there. We don't have a limit to how many you can submit, but we do require at least one. All right. And lastly, we have a proof of ownership letter or proof of ownership or a letter of support from the property owner. So because you'll be modifying a physical space, we ask that you show support that the property owner is aware and supportive through a letter of support. Or if you and your organization own the property that you're modifying, that you submit some sort of proof of ownership, just so we can verify that we're not giving you money to modify a space that you don't actually have permission to modify. Um, it can be brief. It doesn't have to go into the merits of the project. It can simply say, "This is I'm the project owner. I'm aware of the project that's going on. That's going to be modifying my space, and I'm okay with it." All right, so we're going to get into the evaluation criteria. Do we have any questions about those five requirements for the application? I know it can be quite a bit. It is all also outlined um, in the program brief. And thank you for joining us, Kathy, I believe. Um, yes, awesome. Um, Great. Then we will continue into evaluation criteria. So, some background. Once applications are submitted, we convene a panel of five jury members. That includes a representative from the Department of Neighborhoods, from Columbus City Council. We have a public art representative, a design professional, and a community advocate. In addition to that, we have an advisory panel of two non-voting members, one from Department of Building and Zoning and another from the Department of Public Service to help us determine if projects are feasible and what sort of requirements their departments might have for the improvement being pitched. So if there's a requirement that you haven't touched on that you're unaware of, um, but you still get grant money for your project, then we'll help you, we'll give you that feedback and make sure that you know that that's going to be a requirement. So the first is project feasibility for 30 points. We want to make sure you can actually make it happen. So this is the process outlined. Does the project do you have the capacity to implement the idea? Is the timeline, does that look right? Is it fair and reasonable? Is the project within budget? And if not, do you have the ability to secure extra funds or donations to complete it? And then does the organization show the ability to maintain the project once complete? So again, that maintenance slide coming back in. Um, the next category is community benefit and activation, which is worth 40 points. So it's for the community by the community. So we want the community to be actively involved in the completion of the project. So is your idea supported by the community? Is it inclusive of the target audience and or the neighborhood? Is it on an opportunity? Is it in an opportunity neighborhood? And again, I'll show you where you can put in the address of the site and see if you are. And then is the community involved in the implementation of the project? And then finally, creativity. So is this something different that the neighborhood hasn't seen before? So is it innovative in the idea, strategy, or ecologically? Is it perhaps layering improvements for a broader impact? Like I said, is this maybe your organization has a larger project going on and this is just one portion of it? And is the project unique to the community? All right. So, this is the end of the formal presentation. I have the website up here. You are welcome to contact me. You can give us a call. You can email programs@columbusndc.org. You can give us a visit. You're welcome to pop in. I would recommend scheduling it first just to be sure, but you're welcome to do that. And I'm genuinely here to help. So if you have anything that comes up, feel free to give us a call. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and start sharing the website. Um, so I wanted to do this just so everybody has an idea of where some of these resources are. All right, so this is the homepage of the website if you haven't been. You can download that program brief I mentioned here. It'll pop up in another window. Um, this gives you overview of the program, when things are due, the schedule, eligibility, basically everything we went over is on here. Um, and it also goes into ineligible expenses. Um, yeah, so this is just another, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Just another resource for you. And the program brief is definitely where I would say if you need everything laid out, that's where you're going to find it. So you can find that on the homepage of the website, download the brief. This homepage also just gives you an idea more about the program and, some of our last cycle's grantees, more of different types of improvements. So when you get to eligible locations, this is the first place that we have a link to the opportunity neighborhoods. Um, we do also require that it's a publicly accessible location, just so you're aware. But if you click here, it should take you to this website. This is the City of Columbus Opportunity Zone Census Tract website. This is a map of the opportunity zones in Columbus. Um, Here the blue ones are. So if you are looking up your, yes, if you're looking up your site, just wanted to point out it can be a little confusing because there's two magnifying glasses. Hit the one that's actually like on the map, and then you can put in your address here. We're just going to do the NDC office. And as you can see, it's in the blue zone. So it is in an opportunity neighborhood. You do not have to know which opportunity neighborhood. That's fine. All we need to know is if it is in an opportunity neighborhood. And we're going to look that up anyway when we get your application. So if you don't include it in your application, that's not going to be counted against you. Um, that's just how you can find out if you're curious. Um, Advice on what a community involvement should look like for a mural. If you're looking to use a local artist, getting you'll be getting a letter of support from a local civic association. That's great. I definitely love using a local artist and getting a letter from a civic organization. What you could think about is getting some community feedback about like the subject of the mural if you don't already have something in mind. Um, I would say if you let the mural artist know in advance that you will be like giving them like a theme to go off of. Um, the mural artists that our other grantees have worked with have been very open to that. I would just let them know in advance. But getting community feedback on like the theme or if you need volunteers to prepare the site around the mural, things like that. I would say using a local artist and getting a letter of support from the local civic association has been sufficient in the past. So I think um, if you're looking for that extra layer of community involvement, perhaps getting some feedback on the content of the mural. Of course. This is also where you can find the dates to know, and some virtual info sessions live here. Also down here, you're welcome to use the website contact. If you have any questions, I check that as well. It goes right to our email. So that's the home page, but what I really want to turn your attention to is the apply page. Um, Again, this is the program brief that I showed you. This is where you can download anything you need to download. So the actual application form is here, lives right there. The budget template, I actually have it pulled up here. Like I said, there are instructions over here. Please use this fill it out and use that with your application. You can download it right there. These are the implementation considerations. Um, Feel free to read through that. And then the maintenance considerations as well. Those live on the apply page. And then categories just gives you another brief overview of um, our category distinctions. And this also has some links to past grantee projects in those categories, and then some other projects that we just thought were some good best practices. If you need some inspiration, you're welcome to look there. And then here we go over exactly what's in the presentation that we went over, the completed application form, and in each of these, you can also download them here. The slide presentation outlining what needs to be in each one. The proposed budget, you can download that here as well. Um, Statement of support from the community, and then proof of ownership or statement of support. So this is just another tool to go through to make sure that you've completed everything that needs to be submitted. Alrighty. And then if you're curious about the other awardees who have got projects so far, it's on the awardees tab here. These are the other 2025 grants that were approved in July, but we have projects from 2024, 2023, and 2022 when it started, as well as a map um, of where the projects are located if you're curious. Um, when it comes to applying, the resources is also a very helpful page. This helps you get some inspiration. These are just some best practice images. Some of them are for Columbus, most of them are outside Columbus. Um, this is a land grant just to get your creative juices flowing. These are placemaking resources. So we have, if you're having trouble or you need help finding a local artist, these are some great places to look. Um, Creative placemaking inspiration around the US, publications where you can get more creative placemaking resources, and then some landscape suppliers as well. This is also where you can find the info session recordings from all the cycles. So the one from July lives here. You can download the presentation slides. This meeting will also live here. I'll upload it later this week with the presentation slides for you to look at. And then we have some from the previous cycles. I was telling somebody earlier that our requirements have changed just slightly this year, and that's really, I believe, only in the slides that we're asking you to submit. Those changed just a little bit. But these previous information sessions are really helpful in that there's some grantee panels. So they brought in some past grantees to answer questions and just talk about their experience in the program and give some tips and advice. So I recommend looking through the past info sessions for that at least. Um, yeah, and then there's just some other community resources. This is where you can find your area commission if you'd like to reach out to them. A lot of other community connectors. The Department of Neighborhoods, neighborhood liaisons are also a great resource if you're looking for like local organizations to partner with. Um, all right, we get to the FAQ. This section has a lot of grant application questions and just general questions. These are all questions that we've been asked before. I've updated them. I've updated the answers to apply to now, so they won't have old answers in them. But there's a lot, so feel free to browse through that, see if any of them cover your questions. And then there's just this quick fact sheet, um, gives categories, eligible locations, funding, and then the important dates here. So our goal with the website, as you can see, is to have the information in a lot of different places so you can't miss it. And lastly, the contact. This will just bring you back to the homepage. You are welcome to use this to contact us with any questions. But like I said, you can also email me directly, and I'll put that email in the chat again if you haven't seen it. That is programs with an S at the end, so plural, at columbusndc.org. And I would just specify that you have a question about 614 Beautiful in the subject line. Alrighty. I am going to stop sharing my screen. So that's sort of the end of the presentation. But if you have any other questions before we go, we do have about like 9 minutes. So feel free to ask. Um, I'm going to stay on until 6:30, and I will be uploading this video to the website with the other info sessions as along with the slide. So you can have that as a reference as well. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I'm glad to see that this was valuable, at least to a few people. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just gonna stay on and mute myself. If you have any questions, feel free again to put them in the chat or to stick around. But I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.